welcome to this evening's slightly different episode of the Nerd Avengers. It has been a surreal 24 hours, and for me personally, the surreality was increased by the fact that I had a dental emergency. So, forgive me if I'm a little slow on the uptake. Also, it's just me and you. After
Yeah, this is Mary Trump. This is a relative of Donald Trump's. She's been pretty public about her disapproval of Donald Trump, and for a minute now, I think essentially after he served as president the first time, pretty much in terms of the public, and but she has some interesting thoughts here on her relative, Donald Trump. And it's her first reaction to what has happened after the attempted, quote unquote assassination attempt. Because if you listen to conspiracy theorists, there's all kinds of, some of them think that, oh no, the plan was to just nick him on the ear. And, well, if the plan was to just nick him on the ear, then that's not assassination plot. But in any case, I thought it might be interesting to hear what she had to say because she's a relative, So let's check it out.
what happened, I obviously have things to say, but I want more information, So I wanted to. I was more interested in hearing what you had to say and what questions you wanted to ask, and but I did want to start with the very critically important disparity between responses in the wake of what was a horrific tragedy in Pennsylvania. Because let's remember, not only was this an assassination attempt, one person actually lost his life and two others are critically injured, although thankfully I've heard that they're stable. But still, it was just a terrible.
Yeah, 2 seconds. My fault. I just wanted to give a little background on Mary Trump. She is the niece of Donald Trump. So let's just hear this real quick.
Mary Trump is a clinical psychologist, author, and a member of the Trump family. She is best known for being the niece of Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Here are some key details about her. 1. Background and education. Mary Lee Trump was born on May 3, 1965, to Fred Trump Jr., Donald Trump's older brother. She earned a bachelor's degree in English literature from Tufts University, a master's degree in English literature from Columbia University, and a PhD in clinical psychology from the Derner Institute of Advanced Psychological Studies at Adelphi University. 2. Professional career. As a clinical psychologist, Mary Trump has worked in various settings, including private practice and academic institutions. Her professional expertise includes psychological assessment, trauma, and psychopathology. 3. Author and whistleblower. Mary Trump gained significant public attention with the publication of her book, Too Much and Never Ever Enough: How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man, released in July 2020. The book offers an insider's perspective on the Trump family dynamics and provides a critical portrayal of Donald Trump, highlighting his upbringing and the family's influence on his personality and behavior. 4. Lawsuits and public appearances. Following the release of her book, Mary Trump became a vocal critic of her uncle and his presidency. She has been involved in various legal disputes with other members of the Trump family, particularly concerning the family's finances and her inheritance. She has also made numerous media appearances to discuss her views on Donald Trump and broader political issues. Mary Trump's unique position as both a family member and a trained psychologist has provided her with a distinct perspective on the Trump family, contributing to public discourse about Donald Trump's character and leadership.
Happened, and
Okay, so this is Mary Trump. Now she's going to give commentary right now on her views on what happened, so she's been critically, speaking about Donald Trump for a minute, who is her uncle, and who she grew up with, her uncle, and her Donald Trump's brother, I believe, is her father, right? So in any case, they're family members, so they know each other quite well. So let's see what she have to say about her feelings regarding yesterday.
And, we can talk about the circumstances that allow for these kinds of events to occur. We can talk about political violence in America and those who perpetuate it, promote it, and traffic in it. But first, I want to play a couple of clips just so we can orient ourselves in the space of the reactions. And again, a couple of these reactions were within minutes, or very, very shortly after the event occurred, during which, by the way, we knew practically nothing. So I'm going to start.
Okay, so this is Donald Trump's niece, right? Who's a clinical psychologist, among other things, and she's going to give a breakdown of the different responses from the Democrats and the Republicans, how those responses vary and possibly are contrary to each other. So let's listen. I haven't heard all of it, so I'm about to hear it now.
With this still image that is sort of the launching off point for a lot of other reactions. So this is a traveling billboard on which somebody felt compelled to show the Democrats' attempted assassination, and a picture of Donald hugging a flag with a target around his.
Look at how fast this had already been. Essentially, this is hours from the assassination. Nobody knew anything. The details are still being collected, and this type of stuff is already up. A billboard where it says Democrats attempted assassination. You see, so we know through the history of Donald Trump, through his entire presidency and his first election bid for presidency, that conspiracy theorists and conspiracy theories are a fast fixture in his rationale. Whether he believes it or not himself, I don't know, but he definitely claims to believe these things because these are the things that he says, right? So my thoughts would be, does Donald Trump agree with this being put out before the investigation is finished? That would be one of the things I would want to know. And if he doesn't agree with it, what would he like to be done about it? Or should it just, doesn't matter at all?
Face, which I don't recommend you ever do to anybody, maybe especially if you're a supporter of that person. Okay. And we knew practically nothing when this happened. And then, in what you would have hoped would be a more considered, measured response, we have Republican political hack Scott Jennings, who actually gets paid by CNN to spew this dangerous nonsense.
Healing and unity in this country, but we are 1 inch from something far worse. Republicans I'm hearing from tonight are shocked. They are worried about our country. They're worried about Donald Trump. They're worried about the rhetoric around Donald Trump. I mean, I hate to say it, but the rhetoric around him over the last few weeks, that if he wins an election, our country will end, our democracy will end, it's the last election we'll ever have.
Isn't that what Donald Trump been saying about Biden the entire time? Isn't that what he's been saying about Hillary Clinton? Isn't that, are these people deaf? Like, what's up with the gaslighting? It's really interesting how now they shift positions like that. Total different story now coming out of it. They're really worried about these kind of stories that the country will end because of Donald Trump. Well, what about Donald Trump when he said it? Doesn't it count? If Donald Trump commits a crime, doesn't it count? If Donald Trump says incendiary thoughts about other elected officials, does that count? I mean, what's going on here?
These things have consequences, okay?
They do have consequences, and political violence tends to be it. And this has been the case for a lot of people. Donald Trump has made incendiary comments that while he was even in office, how why is it that mass shootings didn't they go up? Why is it that he didn't come out and speak against police brutality? Right? These kind of things. What's up with that? It's almost like these folks are deaf, dumb, and blind as long as you're not agreeing 100% with them only. There's no middle ground for you. There's no way to wiggle out of it. You have to be far right or you're wrong.
Well, yes, they do. But clearly, this is nuance beyond which this person is capable. So, finally, I want to play a clip for you from President Biden's remarks in the Oval Office.
This is Donald Trump's niece talking about the left and the right.
Actually, he was in the Oval Office, somewhere in the White House today. Or not. Oh, it's a slide. Sorry. Then I'm not going to play that because I'm not entirely sure how I do that. So I'll just I watched it and essentially what he said is what what every other elected Democrat has been saying, from President Biden and Vice President Harris and Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer on down, have been saying. There is no tolerance for political violence in America. It is unacceptable. It is un-American. It is anti-democratic. And now I'm totally paraphrasing. We don't care how much you hate your political opponent. Political violence is beyond the pale and will not be accepted. Period. If we can't do that, then we're farther gone than I thought. So having said that, I am going to take your questions, and we'll be speaking more about this, the context, what's led to these kinds of events, et cetera, et cetera. But again, tonight, I did want to focus on your questions and check in to see how you're doing, because this is serious shit. Not to be too eloquent about it, but all right, let's see what we got here. Somebody, this is a great question. This is from Laura. Will this move the needle on banning assault weapons? And I am sorry to say, obviously I don't know this definitively, but I am speaking as an American who almost broke in half after Sandy Hook. My daughter was a little older than the children who were slaughtered at Sandy Hook. We did nothing. Steve Scalise, a Republican who was shot at a congressional softball game, very grievously wounded, by the way, recovered, but didn't think that should change his mind about assault weapons. I think this issue is too divisive for Republicans to change their minds about. And I'm gonna leave it at that. So sadly, no. Although I do hope in future that Republicans have as much concern for children who are shot in schools as they do for the people at that rally. As they should. We should all have concern for the people at that rally. But let's also extend that concern to the children we are failing to protect. I also wanted to I didn't have screenshots for these, so I forgot I wanted to read you a couple of congressional Republicans and their responses, because to sort of counterbalance the more measured remarks we're seeing from Democrats. And I think it's fair. I think it's fair to point that out, right? Because that's part of our problem right now. Okay, so the always grotesque JD Vance wrote on Twitter, "Today is not just some isolated incident. The central premise of the Biden campaign is that Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. That rhetoric led directly to Donald's attempted assassination." Now, obviously, that JD Vance is auditioning in his creepy, sycophantic way to be Donald's vice president. So clearly he does not refer to Donald as Donald. But as you also know, I cannot refer to him as anything but that because my head would explode. The always insufferable.
Yeah, this is Donald Trump's niece speaking about her thoughts about yesterday.
Marjorie Greene wrote, "Democrats wanted this to happen. They've wanted Donald gone for years, and they're prepared to do anything to make that happen." Well, actually, Marjorie Greene, no, that is not the case. That's not the case at all. And if you're starting from that point, and again, these tweets were written, as far as I remember, before we knew anything at all. Like, we didn't know if...
Right. She's breaking down all the numerous conspiracy theories and tweets, on social media and advertisements outside of social media before any information had been released by the investigative department, the investigators handling the assassination attempt, quote unquote assassination attempt. So yeah, exactly. They didn't have to wait for an investigation because they know already who it is.
Anybody else there had been hurt. We didn't even...
And they know why already. They knew that instantly. The conspiracy theorists knew about it before the attempt because they've been tweeting about it. They've been talking about an assassination attempt on Donald Trump since 2017.
Even know if it was a bullet or a piece of glass. We didn't know if the shooter was dead or alive. We didn't know who the shooter was. We knew almost nothing. So that's sort of the context for this conversation. From Keith, how do I think Donald will react going forward? Ow, sorry. I had a twinge. Forgive me. I mean, I think that he's pretty predictable. But I think that we need to wait to see what this convention is going to be like.
Donald Trump's niece is calling him predictable.
Don't forget, the Republican convention starts tomorrow. So I think it's fair to be worried that this is going to be seen or used as an excuse to kind of amp up the rhetoric. I hope not, but I'm having flashbacks from
That's actually today, the Republican convention. So she's done this like 12 hours ago. Yeah, so that would be the difference. Yeah. But in any case, it's happening. It will be happening in a few hours. Probably about 8 hours from now, the Republican convention. Yeah, something like that. So here we
8
go.
years ago.
Or actually 4 hours. I don't know. But this is Donald Trump's niece talking about how the conspiracy theorists already knew before any investigation, and in the reality, conspiracy theorists, they've been talking about this forever. Like, I think the first time Alex Jones mentioned it, or yeah, it was a theory about right wingers assassinating Trump to get a response out of the right wing to start a civil war. That's how wild a lot of these things are. I mean, I'm not saying it's not that either, but how do you know all of that? And I think some of the problem with the conspiracy theorists is that they had a lot of these theories long ago. So, really, why do they even need an investigation? Why do they need science? Why do they need any forensic? Why do they need anything? Why do they need to check the dude's phone? Why do they need to do anything? I mean, do they need that? And what if they get information that is contrary to what they said before or what they believe? Will they go along with that information or will they deny that information? Um, for a fact that you can see it. Most outlets, right wing outlets, they simply don't want to say that the dude was a Republican, but he was. But they don't want to say that. Um, it also was an open and carry state, Pennsylvania. Do they want to say that? No. They pretty much, because it's a campaign, they don't give a damn that somebody got shot. They give a damn about spinning things often. So let's
Eight
hear let's hear some more from Donald Trump's
years
niece.
ago. I swear it seems like 40 billion, right? Is that possible? Probably not. Feels like it though. 8 years ago, I have flashbacks of the lock her up chanting and just the completely apocalyptic dystopian vision of what these people had about America. So let's keep our eyes peeled and our ears open because that's going to tell us a lot. I this is in my view, this is a choice and a potential opportunity, and we'll just have to see. Okay, so there's a question.
All right. She said just a second ago that she believes the Republicans, it's very likely that they're just going to use the convention to rack up, and get more critical about these incendiary comments, also conspiracy theories and everything else. I mean, let's be honest. Trump, they do feel like, and they've said often for a long time, that Joe Biden is going to destroy the country. The socialists are going to destroy the country. Everything. Kamala, Obama, he didn't even believe that Obama was an American. Even though Obama's born in an American, it's considered America. It's an American state, Hawaii. You have all types of Americans that live in Hawaii. You know what I'm saying? They are members of the House and the Senate, which is so crazy. It's so crazy. You know what I'm saying? Next thing you know, they will be saying if you're from Washington, D.C., you're not an American. But in any case, that's her view about it. She thinks they're going to use it as an opportunity to ramp up some of the kookiness. So I'm paraphrasing, but yeah.
Here about people saying that this was staged. I just want to say something about things like that. First of all, again, we don't know everything. We don't know a lot. And I want to go back to January 6th for a second, because I was actually in an interview when it happened, and I had the TV on in the background, and I would look over once in a while, and I was asked what I thought. And it was early on. I mean, it was, the crowd was gathering, and there was uh, what looked like smoke, but was probably, tear gas or bear spray or whatever they were using to attack our Capitol police officers and the DC police officers. So it looked like a mess. And I said to whomever I was speaking to, this just looks so tawdry. It just looks like something that Donald would inspire, right? And then later, I remember thinking, why aren't the police officers doing anything? I actually had that thought. I'm ashamed of it now. But I had that thought because it was impossible to tell in the chaos what was going on. I mean, we couldn't see what was happening on all the different sides of the buildings and at all of the different entrances. So it looked in some instances like the cops were just like letting people through. And then we learned later why. Because there was no way to contain that violence without creating massive loss of life. So things don't come into focus right away. I confess yesterday, it's like something seems really off here. Maybe it's like the reaction of the crowd, the way the Secret Service reacted, but I don't know. I wasn't there. We need to wait. Trust me, this will probably be the most investigated thing ever in modern American history. So I would say, please don't jump to any conclusions. And until we have more facts, we need to keep our assumptions and our hypotheses to ourselves, because it doesn't help anybody.
Now, this is Donald Trump's niece, family member, saying this. So what pops in my mind is, why would the conspiracy theorist not be interested in her thoughts and even respect them? I mean, if you really care about the loss of life, especially of Donald Trump. You see, now I'm not saying that you have to listen to her, but a niece is not, she didn't know Donald Trump through marriage. She knows him as an uncle. You see what I mean? So I'm just thinking it might be a little wise to pull back and consider some of her thoughts, even if you're into the conspiracy stuff, even if you had beliefs that something would happen before this, even if you're a person that watches InfoWars, even if you're a person that believes in these kind of things, the MAGA, you still might want to be a little reasonable about it. Nobody has to jump over the cliff yet. But if you want to jump over, by all means, go ahead. But this is Donald Trump's niece's advice.
Because what we think is a really rational explanation for what happened may turn out to be a wild conspiracy theory that does great disservice to some of the people who were there. Okay, that's completely my take on it. William asks, and this is a good question, and we need to grapple with it. I'm not going to go too deep into it tonight, because I think this is a great conversation to have with all of the nerds. But how do we criticize Donald when criticizing him will be spun as supporting political violence? We're already seeing this as a talking point in some quarters on the right. We're already hearing that by placing responsibility for the uptick in violent political rhetoric, we are somehow endangering people, so we need to shut up. No, we need to talk about this reasonably, and we need to be very clear about what has been happening in this country for the last 8 years, including a lot of stochastic terrorism, which the nerds and I have spoken about frequently. And we need to make it very, very clear that by having that conversation, what we're saying is not to blame somebody or say that, because they engage in this kind of dangerous rhetoric, then they deserve something like this, because that is absolutely antithetical, certainly to what I believe and what everybody I know believes. What we're saying is, hey, those of you who maybe because you don't understand how dangerous it is, or maybe you don't know the difference between dangerous rhetoric and political gamesmanship, it's up to you guys to stop it and to help people on your side of things, to help people who listen to you understand why going forward this is unacceptable, because people are getting hurt. And we cannot survive as a democracy if expressing an opinion is somehow beyond the pale now. And by opinion, I don't mean, I'm not talking about violent political rhetoric. That is not an opinion. That's a tactic. Okay. But having an opinion about how we got here, having a conversation about that, given where we are right now, that has to happen. And it has to happen in a measured, responsible, mature way. I think that's fair.
Or you could start talking about aliens did it. That's also a conspiracy theory too. You could do that if you want to. It's a choice. How useful that would be, I don't know.
Okay. Let's see.
I mean, do not underestimate the conspiracy theorists, because there are literally people talking about reptiles.
Sorry. Somehow my wounded tooth is making it harder for me to read fast. I don't actually think that's a thing. But
This is Donald Trump's
thank you
niece.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, this is Mary Trump, Donald Trump's brother's daughter.
Okay, from Doc Arch. What can we do to be sure the narrative about who Donald is doesn't change? Excellent question, as Caroline pointed out. Listen, this is an election. Both Donald and President Biden are campaigning. Both of them have very long public track records. Both of them belong to parties that have platforms, policy platforms. If we believe, as we should, that the Republicans and Donald Trump's Heritage Foundation backed Project 2025 is something the American people need to know about before the election, it is incumbent upon us to talk to them about that. It is incumbent upon us to make it very clear the distinction between these two candidates. It is not incendiary or false to say, or to reiterate the facts about Donald's administration and what was done during that administration. I mean, I don't understand why talking about the immigration policy, talking about what was done to the LGBTQ plus community, especially the transgender community, there is no reason I can think of that we should not be talking about the big lie, which the goal of which was to undermine the American people's faith in free and fair election. I don't understand why it would be off limits to remind people just how badly election workers and poll workers were treated during the 2020 election. Do you guys remember Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss? I mean, their lives were put in danger. Okay. I am not quite sure if there's any reason that I would find acceptable for our not being able to talk about the fact that Donald incited an armed insurrection against his own government. And on and on and on. And I'm not even scratching the surface there. There's COVID and the at least 400,000 excess deaths because of the way the Trump administration so maliciously mishandled it. There are the other things that had nothing to do with his being in the Oval Office. E. Jean Carroll, business fraud, etc. So, I mean, I don't know why that should change now. What we need to do, though, in addition to continuing talking about, because this election is about who we want to be as a country. It's that simple. And it would be completely disingenuous to pretend that both candidates equally value democracy, that both candidates equally value the will of the people, because we know this is not true. This isn't about putting anybody's life in danger. But because of yesterday, what we absolutely need to start talking about, in addition to all those other things, is how we got here and how to make it stop, with a deep understanding that we cannot make it stop alone.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me flip real over, because there are people that don't know about Ruby Freeman and what happened with her testimony regarding the last election. She's a witness who testified in the Senate. Was it the congressional hearings? I forget what they call them. The Congress. Here it is. January 6th hearing. Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump, Shay Moss, Ruby Freeman 2020 election plot. Yes, she's testifying about an election plot, and she was at the center of it. And I believe her mother also. There was some foul play, and Giuliani got caught up in it. Well, Giuliani's out now. Giuliani's flat on his back. But here, let's just so you know, I'm going to put this in the chat for people that haven't. Yeah, the congressional hearings on Jan 6, right? Here it is in the chat for people that have never heard her testimony. This is a black woman who worked at the polls. You know, she's a minority. She, she's a woman. You know, when you look at the data regarding women and black women, you would think they have it hard enough in a lot of different spaces in life. So you might want to give her a slight extra listen and not just discount what she's saying when she bothered to testify. She gave some compelling testimony, and it looked like she was 100% being real about her experience. Like, so here, this is it right here.
That we're here to talk about today are incredibly difficult to relive. Your proud service as an election worker took a dramatic turn on the day that Rudy Giuliani publicized a video of you and your mother counting ballots on election night. President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and others claimed on the basis of this video that you and your mother were somehow involved in a plot to kick out observers, bring suitcases of false ballots for Biden into the arena, and then run them through the machines multiple times. None of that was true, was it?
None of it.
I'd like to show you some of the statements that Rudy Giuliani made in a second hearing before the Georgia state legislators, a week after that video clip from State Farm Arena was first circulated by Mr. Giuliani and President Trump. I want to advise viewers that these statements are completely false and also deeply disturbing.
Tape earlier in the day of Ruby Freeman and Shay Freeman Moss and one other gentleman
quite obviously, surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine. I mean, it's obvious to anyone who's a criminal investigator or prosecutor, they are engaged in surreptitious illegal activity again that day. And that's a week ago, and they're still walking around Georgia lying. They should have been questioned already. Their places of work, their homes should have been searched for evidence of ballots, for evidence of USB ports, for evidence of voter fraud.
That video was from Rudy Giuliani's appearance at a Georgia State Senate hearing on December 10. How did you first become aware that Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, was accusing you and your mother of a crime?
I was at work, like always, and the former chief, Mr. Jones, asked me to come to his office. And when I went to his office, the former director, Mr. Barron, was in there, and they showed me a video on their computer. It was just like a very short clip of us working at State Farm, and it had someone on the video like talking over the video, just saying that we were doing things that we weren't supposed to do, just lying throughout the video. And that's when I first found out about it.
And were there social media posts that they showed you responding to those false claims?
Well, when I saw the video, of course, the first thing that I said was like, why? Why are they doing this? What's going on?
Yeah, so we know why, because there was an attempt to overthrow the election. So in any case, that's what Donald Trump's niece was discussing, asking, have you all forgotten? Have you all forgotten what her uncle is accused of doing? And so the testimony is compelling. So I would encourage people to go watch it, in case you did forget or in case you never watched it at all. So
Need help from the other side in order to make this stop. It's done to the LGBTQ plus community, especially the transgender community. There is no reason I can think of that we should not be talking about the big lie, which the goal of which was to undermine the American people's faith in free and fair election. I don't understand why it would be off limits to remind people just how badly election workers and poll workers were treated during the 2020 election. Do you guys remember Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss? I mean, their lives were put in danger. Okay. I am not quite sure if there's any reason that I would find acceptable for our not being able to talk.
There is no verifiable information or credible reports to suggest that Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss received death threats specifically due to accusations made by Rudy Giuliani about the counting of ballots. It's important to note that accusations and controversies surrounding ballot counting and election integrity have been contentious topics in various elections, including those involving Rudy Giuliani and his legal challenges on behalf of Donald Trump. However, Without specific documented instances or credible sources confirming death threats directed at Ruby Friedman and Shay Moss in relation to Giuliani's accusations, it would be speculative to assert such a connection. Political controversies and legal disputes often generate heated rhetoric and public reactions, but specific claims like death threats require concrete evidence to verify.
That's good, because I would actually like to know if they got threats. Now, I wonder if there was any other hardship that. Oh, thank you. Things worth knowing. Um, I think publicly being outed like that, being called, being accused of, miscounting ballots. I think that's kind of hard enough,
Out
you
the
know,
fact
because you have to live with those accusations. You have to explain to people these accusations. People are going to ask you, and just the accusation alone is terrible. It can have other consequences. But I just wanted to make sure, see how far, if they got death threats, because I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because, by the way, a lot of people have been getting death threats and related to different testifying on behalf of or against Donald Trump, or you know these type of things. So, but in any case, let's keep going. So I'm happy that they didn't get death threats so far. So that's great.
that Donald incited an armed insurrection against his own government. And on and on and on. And I'm not even scratching the surface there. There's COVID and the at least 400,000 excess deaths because of the way the Trump administration so maliciously mishandled it. There are the
This is Donald Trump's niece talking about him.
other things that had nothing to do with his being in the Oval Office. E. Jean Carroll, business fraud, etc. So, I mean, I don't know why that should change now. What we need to do, though, in addition to continuing talking about, because this election is about who we want to be as a country. It's that simple. And it would be completely disingenuous to pretend that both candidates equally value democracy, that both candidates equally value the will of the people, because we know this is not true. This isn't about putting anybody's life in danger. But because of yesterday, what we absolutely need to start talking about, in addition to all those other things, is how we got here and how to make it stop, with a deep understanding that we cannot make it stop alone. We need help from the other side in order to make this stop. Let's see. Lisa, this is very kind of you. First and foremost, how am I? I just I appreciate the question, and also it's not a question I typically allow people to ask me because it is complicated and I don't even know half the time. Right now, my mouth hurts. That's kind of how I am. And yesterday again was like one of those days where it was so surreal that I don't think I've absorbed it yet, quite honestly. But I guess we're sort of in this position where it could have been so much worse, but for one family, it actually is the worst thing that could have happened. So, let's keep them in mind. And also, I think it's fair to point out that the shooter was a 20-year-old young man who, the kind of which we seem to have more than our fair share of in this country, with access to a weapon of mass destruction that was legally owned by his father. I mean, that's That's not a good situation. So, conversation for another time. So anyway, Lisa, to continue, Nick Fuentes is starting to claim that Donald's campaign is too close to the Jews, and he might tell his supporters not to vote for him. Now that the media celebrities, I really need to stop touching this side of my face. So sorry about that. Have done so much damage and convinced most Americans that Biden is too weak and too old to be president. What is your best elevator speech response to anybody who states that claim? First of all, I don't think that's true at all. I don't think anybody convinced anybody beyond themselves. And it was a moment of panic. And even though I don't share in it at all, as a human being, I understood it. We know how much is at stake. And when you feel like your side is falling down, you want to scramble around and grasp blindly for other options that you might think are better. And I'm just hoping we're done with that part. The Nick Fuentes thing is and again, this is something we are allowed to continue talking about. Nick Fuentes is a Holocaust denier. He's a white nationalist. He is a misogynist and a racist and an anti-Semite. And
This is Donald Trump's niece talking about what happened yesterday and the political environment that her uncle helped create.
Had him over for dinner, and not in the way Hannibal Lecter has people over for dinner, Donald. You had him over as your honored guest. This man, is a fascist. So that is not something you're allowed to get away with in America, or at least you shouldn't be. So the fact that Nick Fuentes, of all people, is claiming that Donald's campaign is too close, I maybe because his son-in-law and daughter are Jewish. I don't know. I tend not to care what people like Nick Fuentes says, but it will be interesting to see because, of course, he is quite influential in certain segments of the Republican Party. It'll be interesting to see how that gets responded to. Okay. And again, God, I'm happy to have you here. Fan, not a believer, but thank you. I know it's actually easy for you to be here because you're omnipresent, so it's not like you had to make an effort, but thank you anyway. Again, another question about how I'm feeling, and I'm pointing it out not because I want to answer that question again, but I just want to be clear that I understand that this is kind of crazy for all of us and stressful. The uncertainty is unbearable. Yesterday just ratcheted everything up through the roof, so that's why I wanted to do this, just me and you, so I could get a sense of where everybody was and just get some guidance about how to talk about this going forward. Anonymous asked, why are my comments disappearing? I do not know, but it's really weird, and I'm not sure what's happening because they shouldn't be. Jake Freeman, do you think it'll happen again? Like, is the cat out of the bag? Well, look, I don't know. I certainly hope not. But it's this. Okay, this is the first time, obviously, something of this magnitude has happened. I mean, we have a presidential candidate being shot at. That is just not supposed to happen. Although American history is replete with such instances, and it's even worse now because of the out of control gun culture, and just how many guns. There are more guns than people in this country by far. That makes me deeply uncomfortable. So between that and, again, the incendiary rhetoric coming out of certain people in the Republican Party, it's not a good mix. I mean, we have seen violence happen. We've seen threats against Democratic officials. We've seen an individual shoot up an FBI office. We've seen mass shooters reference some Republican talking points in terms of their motivation, the way that immigrants are spoken about in this country, for example. So, I certainly hope that
Okay, let me ask you all a question here. Do you think it's okay to shoot up a FBI office because of an election? Do you think that's okay? I'm not sure that's what she's referencing. I think so. It was around Jan 6, I believe. Do you think that's a okay response as an American? Do you think when someone loses an election, that's how they should behave? Do you co-sign that behavior, or do you think there's no place for it? Do you think it destroys democracy? Let me know what you think. It's a good way to have a conversation because there's obviously some Americans that think you should, right? Because they have, do you think it's okay, like the Sandy Hook shooting? Do you think that's okay? Do you think it's okay to shoot up homosexual discotheques? Are you okay with that? What's your theory on shooting up and murdering people, for ideological reasons, for political reasons? What's your view on that? Me and myself, I think it's crazy to go about things that way. I think you really got to be in a seriously dark place as an individual, not even as a group of people, as an individual to commit such acts. You have to be a lunatic. You have to be crazy to do it. Like seriously, like way beyond what um, normal oppression might do. You know what I mean? There's a screw loose when you have other options like voting. But let me know your thoughts on that. She's bringing up some interesting points. This is Trump's niece talking about Trump and reviewing some of the things, and she's saying we need to remind people, although this incident happened, the assassination, we need to not jump to conclusions about who it is. She's dissing the conspiracy nuts, saying, "What's up? The conspiracy nuts started long before the investigation started." And in fact, that's true because the conspiracy nuts already predicted this kind of thing years ago, and they had already alternative predictions. One prediction was the right wing would do it to start a war, and that's right wing people saying they should do that so that they could start a war. Then it's the left would do it. So, yeah, this is Mary Trump talking about her uncle Donald Trump and all that has come with him. So,
I hope that this gives rise to the kind of conversation that makes future violence infinitely less likely. That's all I can say because I don't know. But that requires all of the major players to get together and make that happen. Right? I'm going to take a quick sip of something. So if you'll indulge me. I think I'm dehydrated for reasons I won't get into, but had to do with surgery. Okay. Yeah, and from Catherine, a question about, why the Secret Service didn't behave in this way or that way. I don't know. I have to be honest. I found that very troubling and confusing as well, which is why I think it's a really good thing that in his press conference this afternoon, or not press conference, sorry, in his remarks this afternoon, President Biden made it clear that there's going to be a thorough investigation from the top down, the bottom up, and I mean, if you can consider the resources that are available for such a thing, I'm going to take him at his word. It's going to be extraordinarily thorough. Okay, guys, more questions would be fabulous. Okay, great comments. Oh, we have a Donald fan among us. And I want to say something else too. I know that Donald was golfing today. which means that he's obviously, gotten the clean bill of health and he's fine. And I don't think we know yet exactly what the projectile was that nicked his ear. Not that it matters, but also though, being involved in an event like this is potentially traumatic. I mean, everybody there was potentially traumatized. So I think it's fair to reserve judgment on how anybody behaves in the immediate aftermath of such things. As long as whatever they're doing doesn't hurt anybody else. Yeah, I another from Janelle. I didn't hear this concern after Uvalde, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and I'm going to add Sandy Hook because that for me was the moment. I don't know. I don't think I've ever gotten over that, quite honestly. And the thing is, it's what nobody's saying that there shouldn't be the level of concern that there is about what happened yesterday. I think what people are saying, and certainly what I mean, is why can't we have the same kind of concern when it happens to our children? It's it is mystifying.
That is an excellent question. That's an excellent question to the MAGA supporters. If you care about Donald Trump being shot, do you care about Sandy Hook? Do you care about the other mass shootings in the country? Just out of curiosity, to me, it seems like there's been a lack of that care from the right, specifically MAGA and these types. Who are the people promoting it? There's even people that try to make up conspiracy theories. Alex Jones about Sandy Hook. And doesn't he support Trump? Yes. And Trump even was on his television, was even on his show when he was running for election the first time. So you see, these groups, they intermingle. They're together essentially, even though they can be disjointed whenever they want. But they basically coalesce together for long periods of time and support each other in these things. I mean, it's clear. Otherwise, Donald Trump would have never went on to Alex Jones's program from the beginning to promote his campaign for presidency.
Human beings are very difficult to figure out. Okay, guys, give me some questions. I'm going to check in my other potential question source and see if anybody's come up with anything new. I mean, because I can keep rambling, but I prefer to answer your questions. Let's see. Oh, from Nancy. I saw some comments that this event has won the election for Donald. I'm so afraid that's true because Democrats are scared to criticize him. Do you think there's a way to keep reminding people that he's still a terrible choice? Yeah, and I mean, I covered that a bit, and I think the only people saying that are either Republicans or people who don't understand how these things work. I mean, it was a terrible thing that happened. It doesn't change the stakes. It doesn't change the characters of the candidates. It doesn't, in my view, it changes nothing except, again, and I'm going to keep saying this because I think it's really important, it gives us a potential for doing something about it, turning down the heat, getting on the same page about how to make sure these things don't happen again. I'm not saying that that's a likely possibility, but at least it is a possibility. We would have been much better off if yesterday hadn't happened at all. But here we are. Okay. Okay. I see a lot of people, they're not necessarily questions, but I see a fair number of comments about, whether or not it was staged. I do not want to have that conversation. I'm sorry. That's not of interest to me. Oh, I'll leave it at that. Okay, from Therese. Therese, how best for the Biden-Harris ticket to come? Oh, sorry. Let me start at the beginning of her question. Donald was already playing the martyr, and now he has the material to cement it. How best for the Biden-Harris ticket to combat this? Listen, I think the simplest way to understand the impact, to the extent that yesterday has an impact, and again, I want to start with saying that, repeating myself again, that it's horrific that it happened. But it could have been much, much worse. And the shooter was not allowed to do any more damage than he did. And, this country didn't have to face something the likes of which are pretty difficult to fathom. Again, it was horrific. One person is dead, which is just unspeakable. And for what? For what? We're probably going to find out for nothing. 2 other people are still critically injured. So I'm not at all trying to make light of any of this. However, anybody who thinks that Donald is a martyr is already, in that camp. Like they're already part of the base. I don't think that this is something that whether he tries to take advantage of it or not, I think the chances are likely that he will. And maybe that's fair game. He was there. He got shot at. He owns that story. But he's not going to convince anybody else that he's a martyr beyond the people who already think that he is. Just like he's not going to convince those of us who have maybe a broader perspective on things that God somehow intervened because somebody died. Okay.
Stop right there. Exactly. Somebody died. So don't you think it's even delusional for him to say such a thing? Don't you think that's a very interesting point, because it's very telling how his first thoughts weren't for, he didn't say, did anyone get injured? He didn't ask the Secret Service that. He didn't ask anyone. To me, it seems like a thoughtful person, even if you get shot at, if you're the presidential type, if you're the leadership type, you know that people are risking their lives for you every single day, right? To me, my first thought in that situation, knowing that people have been moving around to support Donald Trump, even the people on Jan 6, the people that testified were like, they wouldn't have been there if he didn't say so. It just seems really strange that he would make that comment and not realize how silly that was. Because why would God work for you and not work for your supporters? That's an obvious question to ask. But here's another serious question. It's more serious. When I saw Donald Trump lift up his hand and his fist and he said, fight, fight. My logical question would be, that would be the perfect thing to ask Donald Trump. What does he mean when he says fight? Does he want his supporters to, how? Fight how? Fight at the election box, like to vote? Or does it mean to pick up arms and kill and shoot people, or attack people, or attack the Capitol, or attack the election boxes, or harass people that vote? How does he want people to fight exactly? I think the media should be asking Donald Trump that, because of his history of using incendiary statements, to that have hurt, caused people to hurt others, whether intentionally or not.
I don't think, well, God's actually here, so maybe God would know better than I, but God has a great Substack, so you should check it out. But I mean, seriously, I don't think that's how it works. Like, you don't celebrate that one person was spared while somebody else was murdered. I mean, come on, man. It's still terrible. So you're not going to convince anybody else that this is totally fine because somebody who wasn't Donald died. I mean, nobody should have died yesterday. Nobody. So I think the everybody's in their camp. We are so siloed, with the exception of some wavering Democrats. You know, we all know. Well, you know what? Let me rephrase. Not with the exception of some wavering Democrats. The Democrats who are wavering are not clear about what is the best path forward to be Donald, right? That doesn't mean that, oh, yesterday happened, they're going to vote for Donald now, right? It's like that's just not how any of this works. So how best for the Biden-Harris ticket to combat it? Well, I think they're doing what they need to do. They're being very clear that this was unacceptable and this can never be allowed to happen again. They are being gracious, even though the person to whom they're extending their grace.
Once again, this is Mary Trump, Donald Trump's niece, talking about Donald Trump and her experience, how she sees Trump, et cetera, et cetera.
Not just wouldn't have done the same thing if the roles were reversed, but we have evidence that he has never done that to people like President Biden, Vice President Harris, or Nancy Pelosi. We know that. We've seen that. So, you know, they're doing that, and they will hopefully lead the charge for a serious reckoning with political violence in this country, and enlist people from the other side to help them combat that problem. And they will continue to campaign because they believe in democracy, and they know that Donald Trump doesn't. It's that simple. Well, maybe it's not simple, but it seems pretty clear. From Carrie, what do we do about the countless right-wing influencers who've radicalized parts of the Gen Z generation? Yeah, it's a problem, and I need another sip of water. So give me 2 seconds. I think that Democrats need to make a very big play for Gen Z. And I don't mean that in a cynical way. This generation, I feel guilty on a daily basis about what we've done to this generation between climate change and gun violence and now the overturning of Roe v. Wade. They need to be brought into the fold, and they need to be told and convinced that how much power they have, because they do. Gen Z can decide this election. If we respect them and make it clear that power is going to mean something. And I can say the exact same thing I could say the exact same thing about the Democratic base. You do not diss Vice President Harris for some, weird fantasy open convention, because that is so disrespectful to the base. And the Democratic base is what has saved our asses time and time again. And we cannot keep taking that for granted. It's well past time. So kind of the same thing with Gen Z, in a different way and to a different extent. Social media is a massive problem. I think it's a problem of education as much as it is of regulation. And what I keep saying, and will continue to say, is, yeah, we need to win this election, and we need to win it huge, so we can stop fighting our rear flank and finally put to rest the whole idea that fascism can destroy American democracy. We just can't let that happen. But one of the main reasons we need to do that, besides the fact that it would sort of be, really bad for the whole planet, is because unless and until we do that, America will never be a true democracy for all of its people. And we need to make that happen. And part of that is sort of restructuring education so that our children are not subjected to the dangers of unregulated social media like TikTok and Instagram and I don't know what other, Snapchat maybe. I don't know. I think those are the big three, and they appeal to different age groups among Gen Z. We need to start teaching civics in a way that actually helps them understand why it matters to their lives that they know this stuff. Like, you don't just teach civics 1 year in high school, if we even do that anymore. We need to be teaching civics from day one and teaching it every year. So our system of government, our way of living is real to them, and they understand why it actually matters in their lives. We need to be teaching media literacy. We need to be teaching critical thinking.
You know what? That's so true because I don't even think I took civics past middle school, to be honest with you. I didn't even have it in high school and or beyond. And what's really interesting is that I didn't get a broader view of, I didn't really look into how the system works in the US until I went abroad myself and lived outside and could see how the system is working of democracy in other places, right? And that's when I started realizing how unique the US democracy is. Of course, there's always pros and cons, but really valuing it. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that it is one of the best forms of democracy for numerous reasons. Number one, the population is one of the most diverse in the Western world, period. Even if you remove half of the type of diversity that it has, it's still one of the most diverse, right? And then the second thing is the electoral college. A lot of other countries, Western countries, don't have it. Maybe it's outdone its time, but it's important to let people know that there is no way that persons that support like the Confederacy had those ideas. There's no way, even Donald Trump, MAGA, there is no way, because of the electoral college, that they could ever claim that they didn't have more of a chance than any other minority group across the West to exist and have things their way. Because that electoral system, it guarantees that minority a right that no other minority, political minority anywhere else in the Western world has. And if you misuse it, it can be taken from you. You see, so the last thing is that I didn't really, understand how important it was to the U.S., the United States of America, until I went outside and saw how other people reacted to it. And then I had to adjust my thinking, because then I realized that, wow, although there's wonderful things like where I live that we have, and hopefully the U.S. can catch up to some of those things in Copenhagen and Denmark, right? Family, certain security values for families that Americans don't have. I know we have this 20 something project where they claim like they want to make the family center, but economics, support, welfare, paid schools, taking down the student debt age, that's all about supporting families too. Equal housing is all about supporting American families too. So what's up with this? You know, so save the bullshit with Project 2025. You're not about supporting families, because if you wanted to support families, you would be supporting families just like your NATO allies already are, through many diverse types of benefits that they give people who embark on having family in the first place. Like, you have a child in the EU, you're getting a year off from work automatically. The U.S. could have done that a long time ago. Does the right want to do that? Does the right want to do housing insurance? Does the right want to remove this inflation or this tax that you have on education, interest that you have on education? No, they don't. But so that's not supporting families by trying to do that. So yeah, it's just my thought, but I'm going to hear a few more minutes of Mary Trump, Donald Trump's niece, criticize Donald Trump and his party and what the MAGA right wing extremists have been doing. And then I'm going to shut it down, and I'm going to catch you guys later today for the Republican National Convention, which is coming up soon. So appreciate everybody. Subscribe, and don't go for the hype. Just because somebody says they're a patriot doesn't make them one. Just because somebody claims the United States of America, claims rights over it, and is calling everybody else an immigrant, that don't even mean their family been in the country for 2 generations. Like Sean Hannity. So in any case, y'all, I'm out. I'll catch you later. I'm going to let her take it out, and I'll see you all
along the way. The Republicans, they want to pretend that American history didn't happen, that slavery was good somehow, or Jim Crow was good, and that there's no such thing as LGBTQ plus people. They want to literally and figuratively whitewash American history. We can't let that happen. We need to make our system of education better, and including things that have been vilified by people who are ignorant and cruel, like diversity, equity, inclusion. Those are all good things, by the way. Critical race theory, it's a good thing. Also, not media literacy. We need to be teaching critical thinking all along the way. The Republicans, they want to pretend that American history didn't happen, that slavery was good somehow, or Jim Crow was good, and that there's no such thing as LGBTQ plus people. They want to literally and figuratively whitewash American history. We can't let that happen. We need to make our system of education better, and including things that have been vilified by people who are ignorant and cruel, like diversity, equity, inclusion. Those are all good things, by the way. Critical race theory, it's a good thing. Also, not taught in grades K through 12. So anyway, I think we just need to, I think we need to acknowledge what's happening. I think a lot of Democrats aren't quite up to speed.